The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Kevin Jordan or his guests. These gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions. And learn how to make your yard summer strong at bewatersmart.info.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. And away we grow. Here we go, everyone. Welcome one and all. So glad you could make it. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the show. This is the Green Acres Garden Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin the Cultivator Jordan, back in studio. So glad to be here. We got a great episode this week. We made a new friend this week. Tim Dick, a local beekeeper, self-taught expert. He's a bee man. He's into the bee mania, Austin. So let's first, before we get into that, let's check in with Austin Blank on audio. Austin, how's it going there, buddy?
Hey, hello, Kevin, and welcome back to all of our listeners. And you are right, Kevin. We talked to a bee maestro, a beekeeper. And I didn't know that you could even do, just anybody can get into beekeeping.
Yeah, just hobby style.
Tim was blowing my mind with all of his knowledge, and I had a really good time talking bees. And we love bees here, don't we?
You know it. We love them just like the birds. They are a pollinator. We love them for so many different reasons. They're fascinating, and I think Tim will kind of pull back the veil a little bit. We've had some episodes in the past on bees that were a lot of fun. I mean, remember
one of our first episodes.
Yes. Oh, that was good times. Man,
yeah,
it feels just like yesterday.
We went to the UC Davis Haagen-Dazs Bee Haven to meet with Dr.
Chris Casey.
That's right. And that was one of our first episodes and one of my favorites.
So much fun.
That was way back when. So I don't know if our listeners have listened to our old episodes, but that was almost 3 years ago.
It was my rookie year for sure. A lot of fun. She's incredible. That was a wonderful time as well. And we were misbehaving a little bit out there.
Behaving.
Oh yeah. So, but things are changing. So, in honor of her work out there and our love for bees, we got another person who's passionate about bees. And what's kind of cool is this is a young guy who's kind of relatively new to bees in a way, and he's just. I think he's fell into it just full feet, 2 feet down, and ready to rock.
He found he has a passion for it, and he's just super interested by bees, and I get why, because he was telling us all about them.
Well, Austin, you're a bit of a filmmaker.
Sure.
And so I couldn't help but think my wheels were turning.
Okay.
My hive was buzzing as he was talking, because in today's episodes, friends, you're going to see drama. There's going to be violence, romance, intrigue, backstabbing. There's going to be the matriarchy, the patriarchy, the monarchies. Will fall and rise. It's drama. I mean, it's incredible what goes on in a bee's life, in the beehive, in the colony. It's equivalent and on par with an HBO. It's like the House of the Dragon.
I agree,
so to speak. I was fascinated. So I think there's a lot there. I think we need to write a movie.
I think you're onto something there. I'd only really thought of the queen bee and the worker bee, and then somehow drone bee, maybe I thought was a worker bee. I don't know,
right.
But those are the only kinds of bees I thought there were. But I was fascinated to learn there's so many more. I think there was 8 different jobs that Tim was sharing with us.
He gets deep into it. So it's a lot of fun. And for us, we look at it from the gardener's perspective. And so at the end of this, maybe we'll talk a bit about some of the plants that can actually encourage bringing some of these bees and nourishing them. Whether or not you become your own beekeeper, it's nice to kind of support our friends and our colleagues and our community members who are getting into it. And I think you might be surprised at how many people are actually into it. It's a cool little hobby. I've met a few people that are beekeepers, and they're kind of like bird people or rock people. They're weird in the best way possible, where they get so fascinated by these things, and it's infectious, and I love it.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and introduce Tim. We sat down with Tim at the Green Acres in Citrus Heights. Let's go ahead and jump into that interview now. Here we go.
All right, I'm here with Tim Dick. Tim, how's it going?
Good. Nice to meet you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Well, it's fantastic to have you, Tim. I heard a little bit about your bee prowess, that you're a beekeeper extraordinaire. Tim, why bees? Why do you love them so much? What drew you to them, and what kind of burns that fire for you? Why do you love them so much?
Well, without bees, we would have food without color. We'd be in a great famine. So we need to really pay attention to them and take care of them. Because without a beekeeper, bees have less than a 30% chance of survival in the wild. So it's absolutely essential that we have more beekeepers to increase pollination and just to keep them alive in general.
I love it. And you're preaching to the choir here. Amen, brother. I love it. And so, you mentioned the food aspect. There's a lot of food that we eat, grains, corn, wheat, that's all wind pollinated. But like you mentioned, it would be not as colorful. So we're talking all of our fruits and our bell peppers and
avocados.
I love avocados.
Avocados, blueberries. You're talking more exotic foods, that people really take for granted. And if, we didn't have any bees, and not just honeybees, but there's all these different native bees out there that we don't really pay attention to that pollinate certain trees that, like our cacao trees in the Amazon.
Chocolate.
Or, the coffee trees, coffee bushes and whatnot you find in the Amazon as well, and all these other exotic fruit trees. But honeybees are I just love honeybees because they make very unique flavored honeys. And it's not only an alternative sweetener, but it's an accelerant. You can use it as fire. You can light it on fire because it's moreover sugar content. And then it's also a natural preservative. It will start crystallizing as it ages. The water content will start dehydrating, so it'll start crystallizing. That's why in the Egyptian times that they used it as an embalming ingredient. And then also...
does it ever go bad?
So they found honey in ancient Egypt where it crystallized, and they actually warmed it up and it turned back into its liquid state, and they consumed it, and it was still good to consume. So
put it on a little biscuit with some butter and you're like, woo, it's pretty good.
Technically doesn't spoil, but I've heard that when you cook it, like when you heat it up, it loses its medicinal benefits, so it's probably better just to have it in
fresh.
Fresh state, yeah, exactly.
And you brought some of that for us today, so let's get right into it. What am I holding here? It's a beautiful jar. It's kind of amber in color.
It's probably moreover wildflower honey because I have so much wildflower stuff in the area where I'm at in Orangevale.
It smells so
good. But there's so much in that area, it's insane. I mean, there's going to be flavors of mint, lavender, different fruit trees. But moreover, a lot of the wildflowers in the area. So,
that's awesome. It smells so good. We'll definitely have to try that, Austin. That smells so good.
Yeah, you have as much as you want.
And these are from your hives?
Yeah. What's really fascinating about bees is it kind of reminds me of like growing wine grapes in a sense, and it's a purely location is like the key. So wherever your location is in a 1 to 3 mile area is what they're going to be foraging on. So
that's their available food.
So that will determine what the honey will predominantly become and what the flavors will be more of and what the color will be more of.
So in the stores you'll see like citrus honey and wildflower honey and what's that, a thistle? That's a pretty popular one, clover and things like that.
For example, when you have moreover lavender in an area and the bees are mostly foraging on that, it will turn more of a grayish color to it. And It has more of a subtle mint taste to it. So there's all these different honeys like clover honey has, that's moreover what you would see in a supermarket. But for my honey, for example, I have a lot of different mints around. I have mountain mint, I have apple mint, chocolate mint, peppermint. And
Love chocolate mint.
I got sages, different times. I got, blueberries. I got several varieties, mass varieties of plants, different fruit trees, berries, you name it. Well, say you have 2 colonies. One side by side. One will focus more on the nut trees in your area, and so the flavor and the coloration will come out more nutty and darker in color. You'll have the other colony, and they'll focus more on like the wildflowers and maybe like the mint plants and the berries and stuff, and it'll come out lighter but sweeter. And so the flavors and colors change.
And these are colonies in the same yard even?
Side by side.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, so I've literally had 2 colonies side by side, and one had like a maroon, like a red amber color to it, and it was very, very rich and very, very sweet. And then I had another colony that had very, very dark, like molasses, like honey, very, like super thick and had like a nutty, buttery flavor.
That's incredible. It's like the two hives are taking different approaches and like exploiting different opportunities and resources. It's fascinating.
Everyone who has a bee colony will have a unique flavored honey. That's why I think it's great to have more beekeepers so that they have their own unique flavored honey in their own apiary, their own backyard. With honeybees, everything that they create is beneficial for us humans. So there's the wax. We use it for making candles, for sealing cheese in cases to age them, aged cheeses. There's also the propolis. So propolis is technically called bee gum, and it's like pollen and like a resin or sap mixture, and they use it to seal or insulate the inside of the hive and all the cracks and frames so they can keep the internal temperature consistent. But if you consume it, it's got vitamins in it. So it's
Have
actually,
you eaten it a bit?
Yeah, so there's a funny story to that too.
What's it taste like?
Terrible taste.
Yeah? Okay. That's how you know it's healthy.
Very, very sticky, sticks to your teeth, yellows it. It's tastes terrible, but it has vitamins in it. So, I mean, if you want to eat a small dose of it in like a smoothie, I mean, go ahead, but
Well, I've seen in the stores where they have like bee pollen, like in containers.
Yes.
Like, so is that something else that's going on there, or what?
So usually pollen is collected at the base of the hive. So for like a Langstroth hive, which is typically what you see along the freeway and agricultural areas on the outskirts of like the
big
orchards.
the white boxes that are kind of stacked there.
Exactly. So at the base of those boxes, pollen screen is usually underneath the very base box, just above the hive bottom, and that when the bees come in, their buckets are filled on their hind legs with pollen, and they'll drop a lot of it. So a lot of it is not stored. It'll drop out of their buckets, and it's collected on that screen, and that the beekeeper can collect that and harvest it if he wants.
Okay, so we've got the wax, we've got the honey, we've got the propolis.
Yes,
we've got potentially pollen.
There's the royal jelly.
Thank you.
So royal jelly is the queen bee's main diet throughout her entire life. It's also fed to baby larvae at the early stage.
So it's like the most nutrient-dense food that they can create.
It's a superfood, and it's really high in vitamins and minerals. It is also, we can consume it. It's very good for cosmetics.
Have you had it at all? Have you tasted it?
I have never eaten it. It is a lot of super athletes. They eat it and dose it like in smoothies and stuff. They'll mix it in. It's supposed to be really good for your immune system.
That's the queen's food. Why are they feeding that to the queen? And who's making it?
So only the youngest bees create this, and it's excreted. It comes out of their forehead glands at a very young stage in the worker bees.
They sweat it out of their forehead glands. All right.
It's like an excretion out of their forehead glands, above their 3 eyes that they have in the middle. Okay, so that is the main food for the queen throughout her entire life. No other bees get that, except for maybe the baby larvae in the very beginning of their life cycle. But yeah, so what it does is in the very beginning, when they choose a queen, it's a worker egg. It's just a regular worker bee. And what they do is instead of feeding it bee bread, which is like
a normal food?
Yeah, for a normal worker bee, they feed it to the queen or worker bee, and it turns the worker bee into a queen bee. It starts giving her ovaries. And that's why she has an elongated abdomen. So she's got ovaries. That's the only difference between her and the worker. She's a female, same thing, but she's got ovaries now, and then she can...
Capable of producing eggs.
So she's fertile, basically. And yeah, so
They give her the royal jelly, and it turns her like into a fertile myrtle?
Yes, technically, yeah.
That's
so
incredible.
It turns a normal worker bee into a queen. Another fascinating thing is the queen lives up to between 2 and 5 years. All the other bees die off in 6 weeks. It's because of the royal jelly diet that she has.
Whoa. How many eggs is she actually going to produce, like, in her lifespan, you think?
So,
per year or whatever?
A healthy queen is supposed to lay between 1,500 eggs and 2,000 eggs a day.
Wow.
So
quite a bit.
If she doesn't do her job, she's not in charge of the colony. It's the worker bees. The worker bees, which take up 90% of the colony, if the queen's not doing her job, they'll supersede her. They'll kill her. They form a coup inside the colony, and they'll supersede her. And then they'll raise up new virgin queens, a handful of the
incredible.
youngest ones, youngest baby bees.
They just select a new star is born, or what?
Well, they target the youngest larva in the colony, and then they'll start feeding that larva specifically royal jelly.
So Tim, what kind of work does the worker bee actually do in its life?
So there's several job roles for the worker bee as it ages in a 6-week period of its life. And it starts out as a nurse bee, and that nurse bee is technically like a cleaner. It cleans the cells once it emerges, it cleans the cells around it and its own cell. And it'll be cleaning for a couple days, and then it becomes the undertaker, which is the next job role. And from there, it collects the bees that aged out, and they usually fall to the bottom or the hive bottom. And then they'll collect these dead bees, and they'll move them out of the colony and fly them away and drop them away from the hive. So there's no corpses in the hive. They're pretty hygienic.
It'd be waste building up if they didn't do that.
Right. So then they become the builders. And the builders are the ones that create the wax from their it's bee poop, basically, and they form it out of the glands on the underside of their bottom, and they'll start festooning. This is the process of them making comb. They'll link together on a frame and start creating comb, and so there's that whole job role that they do, and after that job role, they become a house bee. And a house bee collects the pollen from the foragers. As the foragers come in, the house bee collects the pollen, and it will make it into bee bread, or it will store it into a cell nearby to be turned into bee bread or whatnot. And so as soon as it's done becoming the house bee, it becomes the fanner. And the fanners are basically the air conditioning unit of the hive. They not only keep the internal temperature of the brood chamber where the queen and eggs and all the baby bees are, an internal temperature of like 90-something degrees, but they also fan the nectar to age it or cure it to become honey. So they're pretty unique too. They're technically like an air conditioning unit. And so as soon as they're done with being fanners, they become a queen attendant. So the queen attendant does exactly that. She'll take care of the queen, make sure she's cleaned daily and fed daily, and then from there,
keep her clean, keep her fed.
Yes. So
that's been my wife just gave birth to twins, so that's been my job the past few.
Yeah.
months.
You're technically a queen attendant.
Yeah. That's what I call myself.
So after a queen attendant, she's then becomes the guard bee. And the guard bee is the one that takes care of all, checking out all the bees that come in and out of the hive to make sure that it's not another bee from another
hive
colony.
Security, that's cool.
Yes, exactly that, security. And they'll fight to the death to prevent another bug to come in if it's not accepted. So after becoming a guard and all these other job titles, that's when they become the forager/scout. And those are the bees you see in your garden. That's like a gardener's best friend. They do all the pollinating, they collect the nectar.
Love them.
So those are the bees you see moreover. And after that, they perish. They work themselves to death. It's a 6-week life cycle.
With 9 different major roles they have to fulfill.
Absolutely. And it's where that saying comes in, to be busy as a bee, because they literally work themselves to death.
Do you have to give them supplemental nutrition? Are they able to feed themselves?
Well, it depends on how weak the colony is. So in rare occasions, I will feed them sugar water to build up their honey storages. And it's basically it's a mixture of 1-to-1 sugar to water, and then I'll feed them that. But bees are they need more than just one thing. Just like us humans, we can't eat pizza every single day, to stay healthy. We need to have a vast amount of different things to feed ourselves, to boost our immune system, to stay, our performance is top notch. Well, same thing with the bees. So we need different varieties of plants in our gardens. And I would like to promote other people to take up gardening. If you're going to be, and if you're already a gardener, take up beekeeping, because it kind of goes hand in hand. And not only would it be a benefactor for your garden to have bees, but you'll also get honey too. and other products from the bees. So it's like a win-win-win, you know? So it's just one of those things to keep in mind. So if we can promote beekeeping across the nation, then I'm all for it.
Are you, because you're in it and you're super passionate, but are you being able to connect with other beekeepers? If so, how do you do that? Are there groups or people to reach out to? Because if other people are wanting to start, what are the first steps that, for somebody today who heard this, got motivated, like, I could maybe do a hive on my property?
So you have to, first of all, assess your location, make sure that you have, I like to say, like a 15-foot to 20-foot space between your neighbors, your boundary, your fence line between your neighbors, and also keep them away from any public access spot, just because it's just a precautionary, I mean, you could keep them closer, but as for me, if it was me, like in my case, I like to keep them in a secluded spot where it's not going to, make my neighbor nervous or whatever, and also have them facing south to southeast for the entrance. And then also you got to look into the Department of Agriculture and what they require. But it's really cheap. It's like $40. And you basically got to show your plot plan, and then you fill out a little questionnaire, and then you send it in to the Department of Agriculture, which is like downtown Sacramento in our case. I would like to see more beekeepers, because then they can have their own unique flavored honey, and they can use it for their own purposes. So there's a lot of benefits to having bees in general, not just pollination. But.
Well, let's say I'm your neighbor, and I don't have my bees, but I love that you have your bees. It's like, how can someone else who's not going to be a beekeeper benefit someone like you who is a local beekeeper? What can we be planting and keeping in mind for our own gardens? Just because I know you're not alone on this. There's many other beekeepers in our region, and it's like sometimes the things that we do in our own little small gardens can have a huge effect.
You could plant pollinator plants.
Yeah?
So pollinator plants are like what you would see lavender, you would see oregano, you could see thyme, mint, borage. And so you can plant these, say you have blueberry bushes, and
I do.
You plant this borage right next to it, then it'll increase pollination to those plants. And the bees will find those pollinator plants, and then they'll notice, oh, these need to be pollinated too, and then you'll get an increase in pollination and yield by like 20% because you got those bees right there pollinate.
I love it.
So, and they'll pollinate within a 1 to 3 mile circumference of where that hive is, but they can go up to 5 miles, but that's when they usually get lost.
How many flowers have to get visited for us to get just like a pound of honey?
Well, it takes 12 worker bees their entire life to make 1 teaspoon of honey.
Wow.
So that's why I'm like the saying goes, the more bees, the more honey.
Tim Dick, beekeeper extraordinaire in the making. I want to thank you, Tim, for schooling me up. I love honeybees. It's like science and art and drama. It's like you're telling me it's weird how the bee world is complex and just incredible. It seems like we've learned a lot about bees, but the mysteries still kind of continue in a way.
Absolutely. I mean, I've just scratched the surface. Like you can only imagine what there is to know. I mean,
are you excited to learn more? And if somebody else maybe is excited as well, where would you direct them to maybe go learn a little bit more about bees?
Well, there's a couple books I would recommend they read first. First one would be, I know the title's a little funny, but it was very informative. It's Beekeeping for Dummies. And it was like really informative. Like it gave some of the best information. And then there was the Beekeeper's Bible. And there's other books that you can find for that. But those two are like the main ones I would focus on. Good start. Yeah. And then if you want to invest in getting into beekeeping, Mann Lake is the #1 beekeeping supplier in the nation. You can get hive setups through them, or you can get a kit. Hive setup that you would have to assemble yourself through like online, like Amazon or whatnot, and and then
it seems simple enough. I mean, it's wood.
But you can get either a colony of bees from Mann Lake, like a package of bees with a mated queen,
wow,
or you can catch a swarm. So
Have you caught a swarm before?
I caught several swarms.
Wow.
So
Do you just get a call and someone's like, hey, Tim, I know you love bees, you wild weirdo. Come over here. Over here and get these bees.
Exactly that. Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot more exciting, Instead of installing a package, you're getting, it's more adventurous, It's like more of a thrill to me.
I love it.
So I recommend it. Yeah.
There we go. Man, it's like adrenaline junkie in a way, but it's like, you don't like skydiving? This is bee diving.
Yeah, give it a shot, I mean, you only live once, right? So, yeah.
So raise
Try
some bees.
all your options before you kick that bucket.
Well, Tim, I want to thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to expand people's knowledge on everything on beekeeping. And if they want to get started on beekeeping, I highly recommend it. And I highly recommend planting pollinator plants in your garden too, to increase more pollination from bees. So, and thanks again, seriously, for helping me give people more knowledge on bees. So, yeah, thank you.
All right, we are back from our interview with Tim. Thank you so much, Tim, for sitting down with us. I learned a lot. I had a blast. Kevin, I want to go to you. I'm curious, Tim was bringing up a lot of the plants that bring in bees, and I'm wondering if there are more that our listeners could check out, maybe that are easy to grow and are good additions to any garden. What do you think?
Absolutely. There's so many flowers and plants that you can consider, but just a few I'll list. Sunflowers, all your lavender, of course, the borage, the salvia, your sage. Those are fantastic for bringing in bees. I have those in my front yard, the lavender and sage. Right now they are covered in bees. Catmint is one we noticed in the nursery yesterday, the Nepeta. And that one, when it grows in, tons of these little kind of purplish blue flowers. Bees love them. They can't get enough of them. Echinacea, rosemary, something that you can maybe eat or enjoy, mint. When that blooms, whoo-wee. Clover, of course, but like things that really look nice. Zinnias in the summertime. That's great for bees. Black-eyed Susan, and some that you wouldn't really think about, Austin, that I love. And this is some of these you're going to eat, but sometimes if you don't cut them for your herbs, letting them bolt and go to flower and blossom is a great way to bring in bees. And I'm talking basil is an odd one. You wouldn't think that, but when basil blooms, bees go wild for it. These spikes go vertical. These typically these little white flowers on most of your basil will come out, and the bees just go wild for it. So basil, he brought up this one, thyme.
Oh yeah.
French thyme, English
He was talking
thyme,
about
lemon
all the
thyme.
flavors that can come from that.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I didn't realize that honey could taste so many different ways based on the pollen or the flowers that the bees are going to. That's cool.
I got my first experience with that at the state fair, where you can go to like the honey booth, and they'll have different varieties kind of right there. And so to have them side by side, that for me, that was a great way to kind of, this is a little different. You can get the citrus clover, citrus blossom,
and you
the
can taste
clover,
the difference.
wildflower. Absolutely, for
Wow.
sure. It's really interesting, and the different colors as well. And he even mentioned even the same hive, different times of the year, you're going to get different types of honey, and even two hives in the exact same yard that maybe implement different strategies and approaches to finding flowers. Some are getting tree flowers, some are getting small annuals and flowers, and that affects the flavor.
Wow.
Even though they're in the colonies are in the exact same yard, side by side. So bees are this mystery that I think we're still kind of figuring out. I could tell Tim has that wonderful fascination and curiosity as well, and it kind of reminds me of just gardening and getting that bug when you first get bit, when you grow just a couple plants or something that blooms or something you can eat and enjoy. It's kind of just contagious. It feels so good. And so you get curious, then you start exploring, then you start practicing, then you start gaining knowledge. And so for me, there's a lot of parallels from the beekeeping and the gardening. And he sounded like, just hearing him talk about his own garden, he was going on about his tropicals and different interesting plants he tries to cultivate. You could tell he's just a passionate person who's kind of having fun with it. And beekeeping for him is a hobby. Which is great because he's just like anybody else. He's got a full-time job, works really hard, and it's nice to be able to come home, unwind in the garden. And for him, that effort he puts into the garden, I mean, it gets him wax and honey and all these wonderful byproducts of the bees. We came at it this week from the honeybee perspective, but even Tim brought up there's a lot of native bees that need our help as well, and they're just as important. And so having these flowers and plants in our garden, So it's really important. So for me, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to plant as many and fit as many of these wonderful pollinator-friendly plants into my gardens and landscapes and support these bee colonies, support these pollinators. They need our help, and it's really fun. It made me think about, I was coming home yesterday from our recording, and I pull up to my house, and I have some blueberry shrubs right in front, and like they're packed full of blueberries right now. It's beautiful. I've been nibbling on them, and I look up and I see. What do I see? I'm in a good mood too. And I see
bees.
I wish it was a bee. It was turkeys, wild turkeys, and they're pecking at my blueberries, going wild. It was like me, like on Taco Tuesday, right? After being fasting all day, they were going crazy on it, and part of me, my blood pressure started going up. I'm like, "Hey there, buddy!" About ready to wag my finger at him, and then I look down, and there's a bunch of little turkeys, little baby turkeys, and they're kind of gently pulling off some berries and being polite. And I was like, "That's cool." And so I kind of just walked past them, brought my son out. We watched them for a bit, and they ate their fill, didn't take everything, and left. And it felt kind of nice just to have something for them on their little journey. They didn't eat them all. I still have plenty to enjoy. And so it was just kind of fun. And so for me, that connects back to the bees. It's awesome to have something in our gardens as a little oasis that supports life. And the bees, our pollinators, are such an important part of our life, our world. And so what we can do to support him and people like him that are having and the bees is plant. The sunflowers, the clover, the zinnias, even dill, cilantro, oregano. These are all flowers. I mean, there's incredible amount of plants that you can really have fun with, from edible plants and herbs to just ones that are just really hardy perennials that you're going to notice can become bee magnets. Have you seen rosemary in bloom?
Oh yeah.
It's just all you see is blue flowers and just the backs of bees. And so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I've got one more thing I can add to it where we learned from Tim that bees do the wiggle waggle dance.
Oh yeah.
And I've got a little something if our listeners are looking to dance a little bit out in their gardens. Last year I made the garden playlist of music that you can garden to, and I had such a good time doing that, and I wanted to celebrate the summer again this year. So I'll go ahead and link that in the description if you're looking for some summer jams, something to listen to while you're out in the yard working. If you like that, like I do, check it out. It's on Spotify and on Apple Music.
I love it, Austin. I can't wait to garden to your tunes,
all
friend.
Right. Well, that is all for this week. Kevin, go ahead and take us out.
Well, thank you to Tim Dick for being here, a local beekeeper extraordinaire. Can't wait to see what he's got going next. And actually, his honey was delicious, so well worth the effort. And remember, folks, bees are a gardener's best friend, so let's do what we can to support our best friends. Until next time, garden friends, thank you all for being here. Have a great week out in your garden. Beat that heat. Stay hydrated. Happy gardening to you all. And please, never stop growing. Mama said don't, but I did it anyway, misbehaving. Daddy said don't, but I did it anyway, misbehaving. That's my Uncle Baby Billy coming out.